All right, so let's start with maybe tell us how you feeling after the race in Barcelona. Did you recover well from something like that?
I actually found fantastic. The race was great. The thing that I did because I had such a very abbreviated timeline to get ready, I was looking at images the other day. I was still paddling full time June by January 19th, thinking that this whole paddling thing was still a dream. And all of a sudden, I called my coaches because I found out that the schedule had changed. And I was like, what do I do? So I sat down with all these different coaches who had been advisors with me for a long time. And one of them sat down, who was a new advisor for me. He goes, I think you just need to do more of what you're doing already. And he's like, that's the only thing you can do at this point is become more economical at the stuff that you're already focusing on. Because usually I train opposite sides of the spectrum, very intensely with strength, very intensely with cardio. He's just like blend the two of them, do as many. And I did a HYROX every single week from like January 19th until the race. So by the time I did it, it was just like another day. But that being said, I've been doing this for so many years, it's accumulation of time, but I felt fine. Felt fine.
How did you feel at the start of that 8 week period going into like specific HYROX training? Was it rough?
Awful. Awful. Hogan did one of my first ones with me, and Hogan's a phenomenal athlete, but Hogan was really beating the piss out of me in the beginning because I was starting out at 98 kg, and I probably did this race around 92, 93. So I lost a lot of weight, which is one factor. But in the beginning of every season, I don't run a lot throughout the year. I don't like running. It's fun, but I don't like running training. It's a different style of like, really getting after it. And man, it's hard for me to clock off 8-minute miles in the beginning of the season. My body just feels like cinder blocks. So it was very tough. But now I can go out and clip out, 10, 5, 45 miles, no problem. We're back at it.
So what can I ask what happened with the paddling? Like why the change of plan with that?
I mean, I'm embarrassed, but at the same time, I have to give myself a little bit of grace in this situation because I was so new to it. I didn't really understand. But I mean, when I first tried to get interested in the sport was in the summer of 2021. I watched them and I was like, I would like to do this. So then I started making phone calls. It was impossible to get a hold of anybody. And then I finally got a hold of somebody who helped me get in and helped me get a boat. Once I found the person, they got me in a boat to start training. It wasn't even the right boat. After months of doing that, they got me my own boat shipped over from Germany. Then I finally got to meet the person who is running the national team down in San Diego. So you're just accumulating information over time. It's not like HYROX where you just go on to hyrox.com. What is the season? How do I get there? Who is a coach? What do I need to buy? What is the best times? It's not like that in the sport. It's a very small sport. It's just a niche sport. So as I understood it, we were supposed to start qualifying points for Olympics in August at the national championships. And then all of a sudden one day my coach was just like, hey, the national team race is actually in April, and that's the new qualifier. And if you can't get through there as the number one guy in the nation, you don't even get to go to the second part. And if you can't go to the first part to the second part, you can't even go to any of the parts. And I was like, well, dude, I can't do that. Like I'm brand new at this thing. Like I have ambitions. I think I could do this. But he's like, you're giving me so little runway. My plane's never going to get off the ground. And he's like, yeah, you're right. And I just looked at him and I was like, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to waste my time, and just threw up the deuces. And it was a very amicable exit, but um, it sucked. I was like, fuck, that was a lot of time spent, but you know what? That's life.
Yeah, yeah. So then that was immediately you were just like, fuck it, back to HYROX.
Well, I promised myself that I was going to be the person who would retire at 35. I would not be this person that was dragging this very intense lifestyle of, flying around the world on planes, training hard hours all the time, going into training camps, focusing exactly on myself, only on myself in the way that it's necessary to win. I would let that go so I could move on to the next chapter, which is ultimately for me a dream of a family, a dream of a second chapter of life. Um, and I don't believe in doing the two of them because I think it's muddy waters. It potentially would create issues for one or the other or together, both separately. So 35, I said, was my cap. So I was like, 2 more years, not wasting one of them, going right back to HYROX.
Right, right. So that time in Barcelona, it was obviously unreal. Did you know it was on the cards?
As I said, I had done all these simulations, and I said what I was always running in simulations was around a 51 to a 52, and then I would always add on 2 to 3 minutes for the average rock zone time. So I knew I was right there. And everyone was like, "Oh, I did a race simulation. I set the world record." And I was like, "Well, that's bullshit. I know what it takes to set a world record." And I was like, "I'm right there." Um, so I knew, and all these courses are different. So it's always like when people are like, "You going to do it today?" And I was like, "I'm not promising you anything. I'm just going to promise that I'm going to win." And I did that, and I won the world record in the meantime, which was great. And like the athletes actually had some really stellar times. Like Joffrey was really incredible. My bro John, who's working with me, he did incredible. Like it was not an easy course, to be honest. Like if you look at the sled times and the rock zone times, like they're not these just substantially easy ones, which I've seen in Europe and was hoping for when I first got in. So um it was a fight, but I'm glad that we got it done. I didn't
So
know
do you,
until the row that I had it done.
well, at the row, you thought world records on?
Yeah, because I don't look at my watch. I will look at the watch and say, okay, you're ahead of it or you're behind it. Because don't look at your watch until the rower. Because when you get on the rower, you're just sitting there and there's all these people staring you right in the face. You're like, ah, shit, I'm here for the next 3 minutes. And then you can just like let go of the rower and be like, oh, you're on world record pace. Start pulling a little harder. Let's go. And
Nice.
that was good.
Sweet. So, but you essentially done that with 8 weeks prep. Like I know you've done it all your life to a certain extent, but 8 weeks prep. So you must feel like there's more that's possible.
52, dude. I swear to God. I'm too heavy right now to hit it. But look at this. So can you see that line very well? Ah, shit.
It's just changed.
Yeah. Do you see that line?
Yeah.
So that's exactly when my HYROX prep started. Like you can tell I was doing absolutely nothing 2 months ago.
Okay. So for
Zero.
people listening on the podcast, it's essentially showing like your running volume over the recent weeks, and it's gone from like zero essentially in January, and it's ramped up from there. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And look, here's the kayak line. You can see literally kayak, 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 no more
Yeah.
kayak. So, um, yeah, dude. Um, as I said, like I was when you asked that question, I'm a big believer in science. If I turn my computer over here to the right, which this is a reference point, all of these books, 75% of them are all sports science, and almost all of them try to tell you it's about power. How much power can you generate? And whether it's over a 1 repetition, a 10 repetition, a 15-minute 5K, half marathon, marathon, whatever, world record, HYROX. And I just study those numbers and I'm convinced with absolution that I can hit a 52. If I go back off the grid, I don't think I'll hit a 52. But if I go and race another time this season at 192 pounds, I'll hit a 52.
Wow. Okay. Nice. Um. Uh, you posted the other day on Instagram. Competing is more of an art than a job. Millions and millions of moments in time stack up to what could be a masterpiece or a piece of shit. I'm currently painting my best work yet. So do you think like right now where you're at is essentially the fittest you've been all your life?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's interesting because it's this never-ending conversation of what is the definition of fitness. Like if I sat next to a HYROX athlete, he'd be like, "We're the fittest." If you sat next to Lance Armstrong, he'd say, "I'm the fittest." If you sat next to Matt Frazier, he'd say, "I'm the fittest." So for me, my definition of fitness, and I think I'm the fittest I've ever been, and probably one of the. I just put on my tag the fastest man in fitness. I don't know how to define really what we do so well, but it is the fittest I've ever been. Like I can really get on a bike and clip in with some of the best cyclists in LA and fight them to the death. And then I can get on a road and I can run, with some of the best, not talking about Kipchoge's and stuff, but, and then I can get into the gym with these CrossFitters and I can tune them up too. And that's what I always wanted from my athletic careers. I never wanted to be this person who just sat in one room and just did the same thing forever. And that the reason why I wrote that thing is because I think it was not necessarily upsetting. It was confusing. Like, I think even you maybe posted something about it. People were like, do you think that Hunter could come back and do it? People were like, I don't think he can qualify. And I think people misunderstand how this whole game works and what we do. It's your goal essentially as an athlete to have your core of who you are at any given time. And within 8 weeks, you could go off in almost any direction and go kick the shit out of anybody. And that's my principle of fitness. So all I needed was those 8 weeks and I was right back. So yeah, I am always painting my masterpiece. I mean, I could fail miserably, but it feels like a masterpiece to me.
Nice. I was going to ask how you've got to that place, like essentially not focusing on HYROX, like, and like the paddling, I presume there's a huge element of skill that was going into that as well, but it sounds like you were essentially still staying on top of fitness to a huge extent, really, still over that period, right?
I have my core principles of what I have to do all the time. I'm a very big periodization person. Like, I start with strength and then I focus on endurance and then I meld the two of them. So I did all my strength this summer, and then I was training up for some things like the Ironman and stuff. And I started to build that big endurance. And now it just perfectly synced in to show up and do this HYROX or getting into paddling, reason why I thought I was going to be good at paddling is because I studied the movement and I studied myself, and I was like, all my muscle groups, my VO2 max, my leverage and my strength and my height, it would all perfectly work together. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that was my idea.
Okay. So you said to me earlier, you're going into a training camp now. What does that look like? What's the length of time for that? What's the volume? Everything like that.
So usually when we do these training camps, we take about 6 to 8 weeks, and we typically do them at altitude. So we'll go up to my cabin, which is, east of here by about 2 hours. It's at 5,000 feet. I've always found that 5,000 to 6,000 feet is better than 7,000 to 10,000 feet. Just because of the style of work that we do. You do too much intense work and you can't recover fast enough from it. I know it's a little bit geeky, but some people might like to hear it. What we do during this time is, at least for us in this training camp, we're going to do volume for the first month. Like, we'll try to do as much HYROX style volume as possible. Still a lot of time on the bike, a lot of HYROX simulation type stuff. We'll switch over to doing, like, I just did all tempo based work, doing a HYROX every weekend. Now what we'll do is we'll section it out and we'll take, section A, do it 3 times, section B, do it 3 times. So it'll technically be about 150% of the volume of the race to 200% of the volume of the race, and just kill yourself. But you're doing it at 120% the pace, so it's only similar time domain. And you just kill yourself. You're doing overpacing strategy. And, what I usually like to do is I like to bring in some strong guys and I like to bring in some fast guys. I'm still looking for my fast guys. If anybody's interested out there, I could fly you in, set you up. And we section out the week where, you basically want to have a ton of load on the beginning side of the week and then a ton of load about the back middle side of the week. And then everything else in between, intense load, everything else in between is just a lot of volume. And I know it sounds like we're just training all the time, but we have tons of fun. I mean, like, we'll be chopping wood, we'll be playing paintball, we'll climb up mountains, we'll chase bears. Like, a big part of like this lifestyle also has to be fun, because I think, misery loves company. And if you don't have this undertone of like keeping everybody upbeat and excited, it only takes one negative voice and then all of a sudden it starts to trickle into the next person. So I always tell people when they come up, if like you've got a bad attitude, you got to go home. And if you're starting to miss workouts, you got to go home. Like, you can show up to the workout and do the amount that you're capable of doing, but if you don't show up to the workout, you got to go home. And it's not in the way that I'm an asshole. It's just like, imagine if we were all in like a special forces team and one of your buddies like, I don't really want to shoot today. And I don't really want to cover our flank. I just don't feel like it. Then you're just going to feel this level of like, fuck, I feel like, I don't know if I feel safe. So you need everyone to be cohesively together and really push it. So, that's it's good attitude. I got Cole Daddy. He was my buddy who came. He's been one of my best training partners, really good guy. One of the top guys at Go Ruck Games. Got Jake the Snake. He's another really fit guy. He's done an hour and 6 and an hour and 8, but I think he just hasn't learned how to do it yet. So I'm going to bring him down to a sub 60, hopefully in the next 4 weeks. We got George, who you know from the UK. And then we've got a couple CrossFitters coming up from Invictus, I think.
Nice. So what sort of like volume will you be doing every day? What does that look like? 3 hours a day?
3 to 4 hours. It's tough in training camp because some of these guys soften up a little bit, but I prefer to wake up and do a 2-hour session in the morning, 2-hour session in the evening. The 2-hour session in the morning is you wake up, we'll run from my place down to the storage container, which has all of our gym equipment. You start moving things around, do strength for about 45 minutes, start doing interval sessions for about 45 minutes. Then you're back home. So that's 2 hours. In the afternoon, we'll do about 60 to 90 minutes of running and then about 30 minutes of stations and stuff. We're on the rower or the skier, just pounding back and forth. And, that's a typical day. In the off season, what I like to do is I get on a single speed mountain bike. I ride for 2 to 3 hours. Or I'll go do an Ironman workout for 2 to 3 hours, and I just get fit because I've got a big body. The better I get moving at it through time and space, the fitter I'll get. None of my muscle groups get tired anymore. And then as the season goes on, what you do is you inversely change things. The volume's up here, and then you bring the volume down to here, but then you tip the scales where the volume's down here and the intensity's up here. So we'll get into that the last, 5 weeks of it.
Okay. Well, if like the more average athlete is watching this, do you feel like there's any typical mistakes that people are making when training for HYROX, or like any things you think people are doing wrong?
I think people do too many HYROX simulations. I think I'm only at the point that I'm at right now because of the 10 years of the things I've been doing. So everybody comes in and says, man, I saw you do that workout. I want to do it. And like, I'm a trainer, I have my house company, and this isn't meant to promote it, but we as a company try to get, everybody wants to do more. And I have all one-on-one clients. And I was like, if you can get the homework that I sent you done at the level that I asked you to do it, then you can do the next thing. 90% of people that I work with can never get the homework done that I asked them to do. So what I would say is if you suck at running, just focus on running and just do a little bit of the other stuff. So it's like a 70-30 split, 70% running, 30% of your strength stuff. Most people come in from that position. Most people don't get that the average run for like a HYROX athlete's like 45 minutes plus. Like that's a long time. And most of these people can't even run for 45 minutes without shit in the bed. So focus just on running. And if you're weak, like there's definitely some weak people that come in from triathlons and things like that can barely touch the sleds. I'm like, just focus on strength. You already built up this great engine from doing all these Ironmans and Spartan races and whatever you like to do. I think you really need to separate them and then for a short period of time, bring them together and work on it. But people like to do is they like to do HYROX workouts all year round. And then they wonder, they're like, man, I did a 75 and I just did like a 74, or I did a 76. I actually got worse. And I'm like, it's because you're flat. You're not bringing any of these things individually up because you never focus on them enough. It'd be like if I played basketball, if you hear about the greats, they'll go into the room and they'll just throw free throws for like 2 hours straight. They don't run up and down the court for an hour throwing free throws. They don't do that. They perfect things individually. So I think that's the thing that people got to really, really understand is you have to look yourself in the mirror and be honest with the kind of person that you are. It's funny. I got in trouble for this last time because I said this on a podcast, and people call me said that I'm not allowed to judge people. But if you look at the average woman in a HYROX, they've got big butts and big legs and tiny upper bodies. If you look at the average guys, they have big upper bodies and tiny little legs. It's a pretty big indicator of what's going on in the training groups. And I look at people and I like to study them. I think most guys in HYROX need to actually work on their legs. Most girls in HYROX actually need to work on their upper bodies.
Okay. Okay. All right. If we talk about going to the Worlds, your competition, I suspect I know the answer, but who do you feel is your main threat for the World Championship?
I mean, I don't want to say anybody, because I think it's my main threat's myself. I think if you really know, and you probably talk to any world champion or world record holder, they probably say the biggest issue that they have leading up to a championship is going to be themselves. That would be my really honest answer, not trying to insult anybody. The only thing that could get between me and winning at this point is if I hurt myself, if all of a sudden I decided that I just like, I'm depressed and I want to go out and drink every night. That's not me, but I'm just saying like that could happen to somebody. That's the biggest thing, is I have this opportunity to be drawn away from my focal points. Like I just downloaded an app called Opal today. I have no monetary, this is not an advertisement, but it shuts down all the apps on your phone. I even bought a freaking BlackBerry so that I don't have to talk to anybody, and I only have a phone that will call and text. So that would be my answer towards that. People that I want to give like, positive affirmations towards, like, I think what Joffrey did this last weekend was not a fluke. I think that was a really phenomenal time, and I'm very proud of the guy. I think Michael Sandbach, I think he thinks that I don't like him. I like to give him shit just because it's fun to do that stuff in our sport. But he's the person that I've actually studied and has improved the most since last season. So congratulations, dude. I think Ryan Kent, when he decides that he wants to show up, is always a very, very high level athlete. I think Alex Ronchevich is one of these kind of people that, like, you can't bet against him. He's always there. Those are the people that I'm most impressed by this season. Other than that, like, that's my honest assessment.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a strong lineup of men throughout the field, like especially this season. Like, before
I'm not
you
the
come
only
along.
one. Yeah, I'm not the only one getting better. Like these times are not just all of a sudden coming up because gravity's changing. Like it's just like these people are fucking getting better.
Yeah.
It's very impressive. And also to honor the women's field, like Megan, Michaela, Lauren Weeks, just incredible performances so far this year. And then there's like the OGs that I think are going to have this resurgence, because I think it's rising tides raise all ships. When you see somebody do something that you didn't think was possible before, it breaks through that barrier. And then also when you see somebody do something that you really want, it almost makes you want it more. It's just like, if there's a good looking girl at the bar, that you're not that interested at, and then all of a sudden a guy goes and talks to her. Now all of a sudden you're like, shit, now I want to go talk to her. It's like, it's this kind of like level of magnetism where you're just like, you can't help yourself. You want things that other people have. So it's going to be a really fast season. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah. You got any plans to do the doubles again? Maybe with Tom or?
I've made an agreement with Megan Jackby that I would race with her if she wants to set the world record for girls. I think we could do that. Girl, guy. Tom and I have an agreement. I promised Tom, I said, Tom, if you want, I'll do doubles with you again. We also made another agreement. I said, if you fully focus on Builder for the next 2 years, I'll fully focus on HYROX for the next 2 years, and we'll agree on this partnership together. And we made a handshake deal there. So I'll be honest, guys, I'm not leaving anytime soon. I promised my partner. So I got to make the statement publicly. Otherwise I'll not that I'll back out on it, but yeah, so we're here for a while.
Okay. All right, sweet. But no plans to do it this season, the doubles?
I don't know. After this, I'm literally going to go to HYROX World Championships. Then I have to launch our business, which is Battle Bunker. We start in Birmingham a week later, and then I have to go to North Carolina, and then I have to go to Texas. And then I'm doing an Ironman in Copenhagen with a couple of my buddies. We might try to do one of like we're either going to do Ironman Copenhagen, or we're going to do the Keltman, which is the really, really, really hard one. I think there's like 10,000 feet of climbing in the bike alone. And then the start of next season, maybe I'll try to set it in the fall.
Okay. All right, sweet. How do you feel about there's a lot of talk in the community about the time-based qualification requirements for the elite racing, with variations between the courses and that. How do you feel about that? And like, if you don't agree, what would your solution be?
I mean, listen, it's tough. Like a couple years ago, I used to be very outspoken and pretty brash about the whole way that HYROX was handling things because I cared so much about it, and I still do care. But now that I've become my own business owner and like I've become like an event producer, I understand the complexities of trying to appease everybody, but then you have to understand about it from the business's standpoint. What you may consider to be wrong is just what is right for their structure. So for them at the time, it might be right. I don't want to insult anybody. Do I think it's the right way I would handle it? No. The courses are all very different. It just is. And some are fat, some are long, some are HYROXes are shaped like this, some are like this. And it's like, sure. But here's the best thing you can do about qualifying. If you care that much, just run faster than everybody else, and it's not going to be an issue. That's the way I approach things. I'm fortunate enough to be in good enough shape to handle it, but like I just texted with Chris Grglowski yesterday, and she's like, I'm the 12th spot. And I wrote her and I said, you better go do another one because that's not going to hold. And then she left me on scene. She didn't write me back. I think she maybe took that as an insult. It's not an insult. It's just not going to hold. The likelihood that she's going to get bumped out because the way that some of these courses in Europe are designed, they're a little bit quicker, to be totally honest, some of them. She'll probably get bumped, and it's tough because she was the world champion from before. Was it circumstance that she got that world title? I don't know. Is it circumstance that she'll get the right course? I don't know. The way I'd probably design it is that there's a couple championships that qualify you to get in, and then there's a last chance qualifier to get you in. That way, it's really the athletes that qualify against each other who are going to compete against each other eventually, rather than all of a sudden you showed up in Frankfurt and ran a time that was just absurdly hot. So we may get there next year because this is like, they're going to be their fourth real season, I think. And I think that's probably the best way to handle it. And it has to be the trickle down effect. Like if you've already qualified in the beginning, then if the first 5 people have already qualified, then the next like 5 people qualify to get in. So show up and do your job on the day rather than show up whenever the heck you want. And I did it. I used the system that they gave me. I'm in. People may bitch and moan about it, but whatever. I'm using the system they gave me.
So aside from that, how do you feel about, how do you see the sport evolving? And then also, how do you see, or how would you evolve the elite side of the sport? Like, do you feel like there's anything that people could be doing differently to help develop that side of things?
Do you want to know the real raw answer? And it's going to be, I've got nothing to hold back. It's a poor man's sport. I got $100 gift card for setting the world record. I have set the world record 4 times in this sport. I never get paid for it. Technically, like in other sports, when you do things like this, you get these huge bonuses and awesome setups and stuff. There's a reason why if you're in Africa and you have any fitness capabilities, that you're running your ass off to become one of the best runners in the entire world. Globally, they're trying to do it. But I was just watching videos yesterday of what a 10K in Ethiopia looks like. And there's like probably 30 to 40 people that are in world record shape running that race. They're killing themselves. And you can tell the level of talent that showed up there because of the opportunity that represents the talent. It draws the talent in. So the thing that's really going to happen that's going to maybe bring the next level of this sport in is probably going to be money. There's nothing you can do with the structure of changing the event that's going to make it any better. The only other thing that I would say is like the media is such dog crap. It's impossible. I mean, it's going to be impossible to get the eyes and the money behind it. They really need to start increasing that. I mean, so much so that I understand the value of media that I don't know if you noticed, but I have a cameraman follow me everywhere I go. And it's not because I want to be famous. It's just because I understand the importance of eyes mean value, more eyes, more value. So, long story short, we probably need to increase the media, meaning that they need to have episodes probably coming out every month about what's going on in the sports. And they also need to have really better episodes surrounding the championships. They can't keep on running around. Like the world record I just set was filmed on an iPhone, and then they didn't even save the video. It just disappeared. And I was just like, how many monkeys does it take to screw in a light bulb, guys? That was stupid. That was really stupid. And I don't blame anybody for it. I'm just going to blanket statement say that was stupid. So if you could control the media, you can control the financial opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree. Like certainly, like there's been a bit of talk lately about the live streams. Like they weren't going to do a live stream before Saturday's race, and luckily they changed their mind eventually. And even before the European Championships in Maastricht recently, there'd been no plan to do a live stream of the event. Again, until the last minute, which seemed crazy to me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's gonna be it. That's gonna be really it. I hope and pray that it ends up working out. Otherwise, we'll just produce our own stuff.
Yeah. I talk on here with a lot of athletes about like some of their running times, their strength numbers, things like that, which people seem to love. Can we talk like where you think you might be right now, over 5K or 10K? What do you think you might be able to run that at?
Probably between like a 15:50 and a 16:10 right now.
Okay.
The championships, I'll probably be like a 15:30 guy, 15:50 guy. Maybe a little faster, maybe a little slower. I don't know. 10K guy, I always try to break 33 every season. Like I try to be around that. I think that's important. I think the numbers that I like to tell people is the you should try to take your half marathon time, and that will be your HYROX pace time if you're really dialed. So, if I'm running a half marathon at 5:30s, that should be my goal time for HYROX. I think that's your capability barrier. And I don't know what that is in K, but I think it's around those like 3:30s and stuff, 3:25s. Mm-hmm. And I don't know based on the course that we just did, but that's what I was looking at to try to do per lap was around 3:30 at that last race. And strength numbers, I don't know. I probably deadlift 525 right now. It's like 145 kilos. No, 245 kilos.
Yeah.
Squat, maybe like 160, 180. Is that right? Bench press is about 140. I don't know what else I could tell you. I could probably do like 135-pound pull-up.
What about like your 2K row, 2K ski?
2K row is probably around 610.
Okay.
2K ski is probably 620. I think I 100% could, like, if I just spent 8 weeks doing it, I could break 6 minutes on the 2K on the rower and maybe hit like a 610 on the ski erg. That's one of those kind of things. It's like not as impressive because I got in this big fight with all these douchebag rowers a little while ago because I made a video about rowing and they don't get it, but it's okay. When you're big, it's not impressive. When these guys are telling me, oh, could you row as fast as I could? I'm like, yeah, man, you're a fucking giraffe. Like, it's not impressive. It's not impressive. It's not impressive when I see someone who's 6'8" that they can dunk a basketball. But when you weigh over 200 pounds and you're over 6 feet tall, it's easier to do that stuff. Whereas you look at somebody who might be a smaller athlete in our sports, who's like a really elite level, like that Dutch guy who had the open record for a while. Like he there's no way he's going to be able to row nearly as fast as I can. There are like mass just moves those machines the most. And I think that's another thing that people don't get. Like I've broken it down before. Like technically it's over 10% of the race is the machines. So if you're not dominating the machines and training a lot, you're in trouble, at least at the high level. And I break everything down analytically, and I study all these things, repetitions per seconds. There's a couple of them, they're like the cheapest wins, but rowing and skiing is one of those kind of things. Like everybody, I get out of the skier before everybody else. I show up maybe first, second, or third, but then I get out by like 15 seconds ahead of time.
So you think you think the machines are maybe, there's a lot, I mean, we're talking about the elites here versus like age groupers, but you think maybe the machines are more important than people perhaps appreciate?
100%. Just think about it. I don't know. Like, I mean, it's a game physically and mentally. Like, it's going to cost me no matter what less to get the same amount of work done as you on one of these machines because I'm heavier and I'm stronger and my lungs are good. Let's say you have the same lungs as me, but you weigh less than me, you're already in trouble. And if you're less strong than I am, you're already in trouble. So it's like those two factors right there. So if you can't match me on two of the factors, you're already in trouble. So either your opportunity is to make yourself stronger or fitter than me, because you're not going to weigh more than me. You don't want to just sit there and just eat meals all day long to make yourself heavy for no reason. But yeah, those machines are super, super important. I think that's like a big factor. The sleds is one of those kind of things where everybody, I think, focuses so much time on the sleds, but I think it's one of these kind of things where it's like it's a distraction you can get wrapped up in. And I know I watch so many dudes just posting videos of them just doing sled workouts after sled workout after sled workout. I almost never do sleds. Never. Just don't. I get strong as I can in the gym, squatting and deadlifting and everything like that. And also, not to get on a tangent here, but if you're putting so much intention, like flexion so much on your ankles and stuff like that and your Achilles from running really fast, and then all of a sudden you're squatting all the time, and then you're also putting extreme impact and stretch while doing sleds, there's no wonder people get injured so much in the sport. So I don't touch them.
Okay. When you no. This might be getting into the details a little bit too much, but when you are training your strength, like say squats or deadlifts, are you in the, say, like 2 to 6 rep range, or are you like more focused on like higher reps for something like HYROX?
I think probably the best thing you can do for HYROX is a 20 rep back squat program.
A 20 rep, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, remember that whole conversation that we were having earlier about the person that like is an Ironman athlete and like just needs to work on their strength? Drop everything you're doing and do a 20 rep back squat program for 8 weeks, and everything else will get better in your HYROX. Just will.
Yeah. Funny enough, I wrote something similar on an article a little while back when, after I surveyed a lot of the elites, and Miriam Van Roer like replied with some of her numbers around the squatting and everything like that. And like in theory, she shouldn't be able to compete in the elites because like her running ability is so far behind everyone else. But because of her like squatting ability at those sort of 20 rep levels and everything like that, it got me thinking, like, I really think like that endurance side and like being at higher rep squats is incredibly important, perhaps underappreciated in HYROX.
Well, so a 20 rep back squat program, what it does is it opens up your bodies. Like, first of all, it gives you physical strength. Second of all, it gets you mental strength, which is really one of the harder points of these things. And then last but not least, it gives you, it increases your body's capabilities of being able to cycle blood in and out of those really, really inflated muscles. And what's the first thing you feel like after you get done with a sled? It's just like you got like 2 water bags attached to your legs. Like when I get out of the sled, my legs literally rub together differently than when they do when I was running before, because they pump up with so much blood. So I think that's really good. And then when I get to this time of year, like really, I go into the gym and I put a bar speed meter on, and I just do like sets of singles and doubles for maybe like 5 sets. And I keep my movement, try to move the bar 0.8 meters per second type thing. And I study it. There's a company called Push, and, I can move 200 kilos in under a second. And I just recognize like my body's primed. I'm not going to get stronger. My body's primed. So now I just need to go over and train the stations and stuff. And then I just drag sleds and stuff for, whatever, just because it's that time of year to do it. Not contradicting what I was saying before with sleds, but I do strongman stuff, all that kind of thing. But yeah, once you eventually get so strong, you just need to stay away from it. I used to work with Charles Poliquin, and I had all these ideas of like, I'm gonna fucking bodybuild, I'm gonna get so strong, I'm gonna be the biggest beast. He's like, drop all that volume. You get to go to the gym 1 day a week. And I was like, what? And he's like, that's it. So when you're in season, cut that volume down.
Okay. You touched on like the mental side there, like as a benefit of like the 20 rep squats. When you're in a race, like I like to ask people like where they go to mental wise, like because HYROX is tough, like it's a rough race throughout. Like, what do you think about? Where does your mind go?
It's funny. I have been doing this since I've been about 16, not knowing what it is. So if you listen to all these like really, really like high level spirituality arrival books, as they'd like to call it, like you being in that like, next level of ascension of, your, whatever it's called, enlightenment. You hear all this stuff. It's a little bit, long-winded for me, but I still listen to it to just kind of redefine my understanding and get better at it. But when I used to be 16, I watched this movie with these aliens, and there was this big alien that was coming to destroy the planet. And it was a joke movie, but his name was Kroger. He's like, Kroger is the strongest. Kroger is the best. Kroger can be like, all these things. And like they stomp around. And I just started saying that in my cross country races as I was just beating the piss out of all these other kids. And I just kept on doing it forever. And it's been the same kind of dialogue forever where I catch myself out there on these runs and I'm like, my legs are dead, my head's going to explode. And then all of a sudden I get into my narrative, my mantra, and then I'm gone. Like literally all of a sudden I go from like, boom. And I just am out and I'm moving so quickly. And the more I say it, the more almost like everything else dissipates. I'm not thinking of people. I'm not thinking of the next station. I'm not thinking of anything other than the exact act in the moment as I'm doing it, as if no one else could do it. No one else could be here. No one else could understand this. Yet just from being here, you're already above that. You're above that idea. I know that sounds odd, but you just kind of transcend into this space and you're going. You don't even know it until you're there. And you're like, oh my God, I just ran 2 laps and I'm back on the entrance again. And I'm on world record pace. And that's where I end up. That's where I end up. I don't even notice the movements. I just notice the being above and beyond everything that's going on. I'm above it. I know that sounds odd.
Nice. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Is there some, like you said about, like, is there affirmations in there? Are you when you're in that place, are you telling yourself like, I'm the best?
100%. I honestly tell myself I'm a God king all the time. It's like not a God, not a king, a God king. And I was sitting next to somebody. It was really interesting. We're flying through London, flying from Barcelona. I end up on a flight next to this guy. We're going through security together, getting out under London Heathrow. And this guy, he goes, "You're from the States, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "California." He goes, "Oh, cool, Oregon." So we sit down, then we go into the lounge and we just start having lunch. We never met each other before. We spent 2 hours together drinking whiskey in the airport. And we don't know each other from a hole in the wall at all. And he's kind of this person who's gone down this whole psychedelic approach of doing, mushrooms and ayahuasca and things like that. And I was telling him about some of my experiences. And he doesn't know who I am. And I'm not assuming that he should know who I am. And we get to this conversation point, and I was like, "Hey, listen, I'm not trying to be braggadocious, but I'll just be totally honest. Like, I've done all of these things." And he's like, and he was talking about ego. And I was like, "Yeah, man, like, I'm not trying to tell people that I'm better than them. I'm just knowing that I'm better than them. And that's the only way that I'm able to approach these things. Otherwise, I can't end up in the place that I'm at. I can't even have the conversation of who is the best. I already know who's the best. It's not even a question. It's not even a conversation because it's already been chiseled into the ground. And everywhere I look, you know what I mean? Before you asked the question, I knew you knew. And before I answered the question, I knew I knew. And you have to be in that place. Otherwise you will never, it'll be harder for you to get to that place if you're not willing to even know that it's already happening.
Okay. All right.
When I
Sweet.
first met Christian, I told him the times that I was planning on doing, and he goes, "That's impossible." And within about a year of knowing him, I did it. And then a year past that, I did it again. And then a year past that, I did it again. And he told me it was impossible. And I looked at him and told him without and I'd never done his race before. And I just knew. And like that's the final breath of that piece of the conversation. But I hope that all makes sense to people. A lot of people, I've gotten this a lot. People are like, "You're an asshole and you're not humble." And I was like, well, you don't understand the definition of humble, and you've never had the power to really understand the power of using the word humble. So maybe that makes better sense when I say that.
All right, sweet. We'll finish up in a sec, but like you've won lots in your career, world record in Barcelona at the weekend. Like what's your best memory in sport of your lifetime?
World's toughest mudder 2014 team race. Happiest moment I've ever had. Just 24 hours of hanging. Just 24 hours of hanging out with your bros. It's not even an athletic event. It's more of like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing where you're like role-playing characters going through this incredible journey of, do you turn right? Do you turn left? Roll the dice. Who does what in this situation? It was almost like a game. It was so much fun. And it was one of the greatest accomplishments of our lives at the time. We were just a bunch of rough and tumble kind of guys. Some of these guys are still my best friends. So I'm just lucky to have them. I'm not really much of a team sport athlete, and that really, they're my team still to this day.
Awesome. All right. Before we finish, do you want to tell us a bit about Builder and the new product that you've got coming out before we finish up?
Yeah. Our company Builder, Building Better Athletes. It's a very proud moment. I'm drinking it right now. I'm a full believer in it. It's a business that I started years ago, but didn't actually have, selling products up until a couple years ago. And, what we're doing with this company Builder is our motto is building better athletes. We're a product for athletes. We're not a product for bodybuilders. We're creating ingredients that are going to help that hybrid athlete reach those high level of achievements, and find the best versions of themselves. So our first product's called Hydro. It was a specific, product that I made that I knew was going to help me and other athletes get to the finish line in better shape. It really kind of specifically addresses our needs of hydration. And then our second product called Strength X2. It's 2 ingredients, creatine and citrulline, which is kind of the ultimate combination of being able to push the strength performance for people like hybrid athletes inside of the gym. It can benefit anybody, but it's really designed for us. So if you guys are interested, please look us up. We'd love to help support you in any way possible. And we're really grateful just to have the opportunity to connect with the community. And that's going to be really the next chapter of life for me once I retire, is being able to spend more time with athletes and be able to help support their dreams, because everyone's helped support mine thus far.
Okay. All right. Nice.
Yep.
When's your next race? Is it Manchester, or are you racing before that?
I think we're going to race April 23rd in Anaheim, but I every time I end up listing a race that I'm going to go to, there's a 50% chance that I'm not going to show up. Not because I don't want to, it's just because it's got to fit the narrative. So I would love to see you guys in Anaheim. Show up in shape, have a good time. We'll crush some beers afterwards. It's going to be good. Dude, thanks so much for showing up to our event and giving us the opportunity to chat with you. It was really cool connecting.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for doing this call as well. I really appreciate it. I know you're very busy, and I know you're going into a camp now, so I'm glad we got the chance before you did that. So
yeah, brother, it was really cool. Great connecting. I'm gonna chug some coffee and get on to the next one, and we'll catch up soon.
all right, thanks. Take care.
Bye. Bye.